So here we are to kind of give you a little bit of an overview or a history, because I fundamentally believe that if we have the information, and I believe enough in the people, that if they have the information and it's the correct information, then they can make the decisions I think will be best. And so I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a history of how we got to where we're at. So here we are. In 1984, we had the first quarter-cent sales tax. See that down there on the left corner? It generates, the first quarter-cent sales tax in Utah County generates $17 million. Now, I have to preface that a little bit because, remember, it's tied to sales. So as sales go up and down in our county, so will go the tax itself. But currently, right now, it generates about $17 million. 100% of the first quarter-cent sales tax goes straight to UTA. And it's important to know that because, the county collects the tax and then they distribute it. But this tax does not go through the county at all. UTA goes over and they pick up this tax weekly if they wanted to. So they get this straight to UTA. The second quarter-cent sales tax began in 2006. It was voted on by the people, and some of you might remember that the whole plug behind that was to get Front Runner down here. You remember that, some of you? They talked about Front Runner, the need for Front Runner down here. So the second quarter was voted in by the people. 92% of that goes to UTA. It does have a different silo, so 85% of that goes straight to the Front Runner project. Then you have 5% of this 92 that also goes towards buses. BRT systems was one of them that was put in there. And then the 8% at the top is road money. So if you look at the calculation, we're trying to give you an idea annually up here. So $35 million goes towards UTA, 1.6 towards roads. The third quarter-cent sales tax, which began in 2009, and remember, the third quarter-cent sales tax was enacted. It wasn't voted on by the people. The county commissioners enacted that one. Starting in 2009, approximately $17 million. Originally, it had silos in it. It had silos in the sense that it had 40% that went to state roads, 40% that went to local roads, and 20% that went to right-of-way purchases. And that's what the third quarter-cent sales tax used to look like before 2014. And then in 2014, it was changed. The silos were taken out because when it's in a silo, you have to spend it for whatever it's designated for. You can't do anything different than what it's designated for. The silos were taken out. The state legislature took those silos out on the premise and the understanding that I have received that it would go towards road funding. So again, we go up the top and we see $35.7 million, 18.6 for roads, and that's where we sit currently with the 3/4 cents sales tax that's available. But along comes BRT, which is the Bus Rapid Transit System in Provo and Orem, and with that Bus Rapid Transit System, remember, in the second quarter-cent sales tax, there was a little portion for BRT. They didn't even go after that. They went after what we have in the third quarter-cent sales tax and said, let's go after this fund, this money here, this revenue stream, to go for the bonding. So now we have, potentially, because BRT has not gone through, it still has to go through the federal process and be matched. So we have the $7.2 million there, which will be the debt service that goes towards BRT. Its length goes out for quite some time. And the people who voted on this was the mayors in the county. So they looked at it, and I was sitting in the meeting. I wasn't an elected official at the time. And they were saying, our current projects are okay. Our current road funding is all right. We're going to be able to handle what's going on. Even with taking this big chunk out of the third quarter-cent sales tax, we're okay. We can do a big project like this out of the third quarter and still be fine until we get paid back in 2028. That was how it was sold. That's how it was sold all the way along. And then, all of a sudden, we start getting towards the fourth quarter to sell the fourth quarter, and it switched. Now the mayors are saying, we have these huge deficits, our roads have terrible problems, we need money right now, we need to sell this thing to try to get money back. I find it ironic that that happens. I even called them out on it and said, why are we doing that? You gave it away over there, and now you're asking the people to come and support with a new tax. This fourth quarter is a new tax. A new tax coming to us, which we're going to be on the ballot. Some places like Orem and Cedar Hills, Lehigh, Vineyard, and there's one other. They already have their ballots right now because they're doing the mail-in, the vote by mail. So they already have their ballots. And so the fourth quarter cent sales tax is split up with a 40%, a 40%, and a 20%. The 40%, as you can see, goes straight to UTA, and that's it. There's nothing else. It says in the language it goes to UTA. There's no other options. The 20% goes to the county, and the 40% on top goes straight to the cities. Different from the other third quarter in which it was allocated and it was in pots of money going towards programs or going towards certain areas. This will come straight to the city if this tax goes through, which a lot of mayors say, you know, at least we're getting something out of this. And I think the something, I've called it, is less than a Band-Aid. If you really start looking at the money that this is going to generate and what this is going to do, it's less than a Band-Aid. I would like to see us vote this down and actually start a conversation. Because just like in here in Pleasant Grove, a proposal came to us 2 years ago, and it was voted down. Now a conversation is beginning. The conversation to say, where do we really want? What do we really want? I would like to see us do the same thing with this fourth quarter cent sales tax. Let's vote it down. Go back to the legislature, and there's legislators that have told me they'd be willing to run some bills on this and readjust this and look at it from the perspective of the county and the cities. We are always telling each other that we want to have government as local as possible, and yet we have entities at times that are always pulling it away from us. But the monies that is generated and giving to the city, like Pleasant Grove, it's like $350,000 is what it would generate. Hardly enough to do anything in the city, hardly enough to do anything in the way of fixing the actual needs that we have. I would like us to have a good conversation all across the board on what we can do and what we should do and how we can reprioritize where we should be as a county and as citizens. And so with that, thank you for being here. I'm going to pass this off to the next that's coming up, and thanks for being here tonight.
Hello, my name is Casey Vokes. I'm the immediate past chairman of the Utah County Republican Party, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes. I'm actually going to go back to some of Bill's slides. So let's talk about the actual burden on the individual. First of all, you have your federal income tax, and that can fall anywhere, 15% of your income, 25%, somewhere in there. But let's say it's like an average. You're paying about 22.5% of your income to that. Another 5% to the state income tax, another 2% to your property taxes. A lot of people spend pretty much everything that they bring in. So let's say, your sales tax burden, the sales tax rate is 6.75. They want to raise it to 7. You might spend anywhere from 3% of your income all the way up to more than you're actually bringing in on sales tax. Then you've got miscellaneous taxes, wrap taxes, different things that are being bundled into your sales tax burden or into other taxes. Your fees go up regularly. And once you start tabulating and totaling these taxes, you get to a point that the tax burden is easily 40, 50, 60%, depending on your income levels. That's insane. That's absolutely outrageous and not the intent that I think the founders of this nation had, and it's certainly not what's required in order for us to get done what needs to be done. Roads are a problem. You come over to the graph and you look at the first quarter cent. The first quarter, all of it goes to UTA. So we're looking at $17 million right there. Second quarter, it was going to also be $17 million, but then we got commissioners who got zealous and excited because the state gave them an opportunity to raise that rate as well. And so they go ahead and they do that. And then that all goes to the front runner system. 95% of the front runner system is, so 95% of the ticket that you pay to go on FrontRunner is subsidized. So imagine that. I mean, you pay, if you're going up to Salt Lake, it's like a $8, $9 ticket. That is nowhere near what you should be paying if you're riding that system. That is not a sustainable system. It was premature. It's nice. I mean, I guess it's convenient. It's a nice train. It's not overly crowded, which is terrible from a business model perspective. Then you go into the third quarter cent, and the county, everybody's crying foul and saying, oh, we need this money. You're not thinking ahead. Those of you that oppose this tax, we're out of money. But then they go in and they get us roped into a federal START grant so we can fund the BRT program, because we have to match the funding at our level for what the level that they're willing to, that the federal government is willing to commit to it. So that we have to go and we have to bond and we have to contribute this money from the third quarter cent. It gets out of control very quickly when you have an organization such as UTA that we're continuing to subsidize. So they have money, they have their own financial interests. I mean, because some of these guys over at UTA are making $500,000 a year. And so we're subsidizing that, we're paying that for an organization that, if it was my business, would be bankrupt. Nobody here could run a business the way UTA is run. Mass transit, we know, has to be subsidized. So that opens up a whole other discussion on mass transit. But subsidized to this tune, I mean, even Chicago, we're talking Chicago, one of the most corrupt places in America. They even have benchmarks for bus ridership requirements. Like, it's got to be what? I think like half full, Commissioner Lee? Is it supposed to be half full? 3/4 or a third full? 30%. So it's got to be 30% in order for the bus line to stay open. We don't have those kinds of requirements here. We need to open more bus lines because we got to have more executives making more money. I actually don't know how nefarious it is. All I know is what I'm looking at. I'm reading the legislative auditor's report, and I'm going, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And Vineyard, Commissioner Lee and I, and as we were down there, there were concerns about, well, this road down here by the Megaplex, there's going to be, at rush hour, people are going to have to wait 30 minutes to get through the stoplight. It's going to be out of control. It's going to be terrible down here. And we need road money. And my response is, well, who was the stupid person that approved all of these apartment developments to go in without having a sustainability plan? That idiot needs to be fired. Like, that's ridiculous. And we don't have that kind of accountability at any level in our government. You don't see people get fired when they screw up to that level. In my company, a small business, we've got 30 employees. I've had people make really stupid choices. And I've had to have that conversation where they've had to be let go. And it's not a fun conversation for me. And it's definitely not a fun conversation for them. But when you fail at your job or you damage your employer or the business in some way that is significant to that level, or you are betraying your fiduciary responsibility, you are fired. You lose your job. That doesn't happen in government. It just doesn't. They get a pass because, especially here in Utah, because they go to church with this person or that person, and we all want to be friends. We don't want to rock the boat too much. Instead of just calling a spade and saying, my gosh, these are people's tax dollars. You go up and you raise this to the tune of $34. So according to their numbers, you're looking at like $34 per person. We all know it's going to be more than that per year. If this were solving the roads problem, and the roads problem, we had explored all other options. We had looked at fiscal responsibility and we had delved into these things. I'd perhaps be open if we truly had explored other options. But we haven't explored other options. We haven't done subsurface matching to surface repairs. We haven't done the due diligence on all of these things that needs to be done. We haven't properly looked ahead and anticipated. This won't solve the problem. $300,000, $340,000 will not solve the problem for Pleasant Grove. That's what your share will be if you get this. That doesn't fix your problem. If you have a roads problem, that is not a drop in the bucket. That does nothing. It doesn't fix the problem. The problem is in incompetence in government. That's where the problem is, and people don't want to talk about that. I don't know, and I don't want to. I don't want to get overly specific here in Pleasant Grove because I don't know. I do have a business here in Pleasant Grove. I have had some interesting run-ins with bureaucrats in the city. They're nice people, but they do like to take our money and a lot of my time. But we do have a problem overall in government with this whole attitude and approach. So I just encourage you on this issue, on UTA and on roads, as you're looking at the true solution to these problems, ask the questions. 69% of the money that we could be raising from this, that could be going to road problems, is going to UTA, okay? A program that 3,300 people use a day in this county. 3,300 people ride buses in this county. That's nuts when you're talking about a county of 540,000 people that does have transportation needs that are not being met. So let's just keep that in mind. I encourage you guys to continue to research this issue. 2014 Legislative Auditor's Report, like I said, if it wasn't your tax dollars, it reads like a Christmas present because it's crazy. So please read that and do that research. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight.
By the way, I'm State Representative Brian Green. If you live in Pleasant Grove, I'm your state representative. I hope all of you know that. If not, we need to get to know each other. But so this session, the cities, counties, transit, and Mountain Land Association of Government came to the legislature with a request. Give us another quarter-cent local option because we really need it for streets. And as we've already heard, this evolved into a bill, I don't know what I did there, that gave 40% of the money to cities, 40% to UTA, 20% to the county, but that could be used for public transit. So up to 60% of this money can be used for transit. And to me, being from Pleasant Grove, driving on these roads, I said, that isn't going to solve our problem. We have a much greater problem in Pleasant Grove than will be solved by a pro rata share of this 40% of our sales tax increase. Even together with the gas tax increase, which I thought was a good idea, what we did there was had a 5% gas tax increase and changed our structure from a fixed cent per gallon, 24.5 cents, to a percent, so that as prices increase, as we experience inflation, which we always do, that purchasing power of that tax revenue is not eroded. Because the last time that was changed, went to 19.5 cents in 1997. Those $1997 today are worth only 60% of what they were worth in 97. So our purchasing power with that gas tax has decreased. Now, our city gets about $1 million a year out of that gas tax revenue. And what they've done with it, I won't go into it, but that gas tax increase will add about another $150,000 to the city. This sales tax increase is estimated to add another $340,000 a year to the city. But if any of you have talked to the city, you know, and if you've been to any of the city council campaign events, there's been a lot of talk about the actual need for our city is on the order of millions of dollars annually to adequately repair and maintain our roads, $4 to $5 million. So this gets us really nowhere. And the bad thing about this is that 60 cents of every dollar in new tax that you as a Pleasant Grove citizen pay goes outside of Pleasant Grove. Does Pleasant Grove no good. And so when I looked at this, when we were reviewing this, we were debating this in the legislature, I said, the city was not at the table, cities collectively were not at the table with any of these prior tax increases. We're finally going to address cities' needs here. Let's do it right. Let's not dilute it. Since they had nothing in these three, let's give the lion's share of this to the cities. So I ran a bill. It's referenced down here. It was a fourth substitute of House Bill 362, which would have taken this 40% going to UTA, and reallocated it to the cities. And it didn't pass. They had about 25 votes, 25 representatives that were interested in doing that. Well, why? It's because they had been lobbied hard by not their constituents, and not even their constituent cities. And this is where I want to get back to MAG. But really, it was the creation of a three-headed monster that is comprised of MAG, Mountain Land Association of Governments, the League of Cities and Towns, and the Association of Counties. Three non-governmental, unelected bodies that, I'm sad to say, are really, in effect, your local governments. I have seen a trend where there is way too much deference given to these organizations by our local elected officials. Government has become, and this is true at every level, government has become more concerned with representing the interests of government than representing the interests of the people who elected them. And as I said, that's true at every level. And I saw it very clearly in this whole process with HB 362. I couldn't get other legislators whose cities need tax revenue, need road funding revenue as bad as Pleasant Grove. I couldn't get enough of them to side with me to correct this problem, to reallocate those funds in a manner that benefits the cities and, in particular, the citizens that live within their districts. You know, there's an old saying that says, in a representative government, the people usually get the government they deserve. And what that means is it falls on you. It falls on each of us as voting citizens to elect people who understand they represent the people. They don't represent governmental interests. Every time we have a bill in committee in the legislature, we get lobbyists and we get other government agencies, whether they're city, county, or state agencies, in there either lobbying for or against a particular bill at a rate probably 10 to 1 in comparison to the number of individual citizens we get in there expressing their interests. And I don't know if that's because the citizens feel it's a lost cause. They don't think that their single voice does any good. But I'm telling you it does, at least for me. I understand who I represent. I represent you. I don't represent UTA. I don't represent city governments. I don't represent the county. I don't represent state agencies. I represent the citizens of House District 57. And your interests are paramount. And I knew in this case that your interests were getting the funding necessary to repair and maintain our roads. But what we need are local officials standing up for this. In my effort to do this, I didn't have one representative from a city in my district support me in this. That was alarming to me because this is exactly what the city needed, more money. This doesn't solve our problem. It means your city government is going to have to come back to you, reach into your pocket again, to come up with additional funding to try to fix the roads, or we continue to just kick the can down the road. I just want to finish with sharing with you my philosophy on tax policy. I find it very disturbing as both a state legislator and probably even more so as a private citizen, the arguments we hear constantly for increasing taxes. We're told that we're going to double our population in this state by the year 2050. We have to prepare now and build that transportation system of the future. That's what justifies all this. Well, we can't build a transportation of this system of the future at the cost of neglecting our transportation system that serves us today. And that's exactly what we're doing. I always like to share this mental image or this physical image of something that I think depicts that very clearly, that we have neglected our current transportation system while chasing this magical and elaborate transportation system of the future. And that is, if you just go out to American Fork, go down State Street to 300 North, turn and go out under the freeway to the Pioneer Crossing Transit Depot, or Front Runner Depot. It's a beautiful facility. But did you ever notice what it looks like and the roads you have to drive on to get to it? People cannot walk to that facility. There's no curb gutter sidewalk. It's a narrow road. It's falling apart. We're encouraging people to get in their cars, drive to the Front Runner station. They can't walk. They can't even ride bikes because we've neglected the transportation needs of today to build a transportation system of the future. And I think our priorities are backwards. I have no problem with planning for the future, but not at the cost of adequately providing necessary government services to our current citizens. So here's my philosophy on tax increases. I don't buy the argument that we have to increase taxes because tax rates haven't been increased for years. Well, that's true in one specific context. That is where we have a fixed cent rate or a fixed dollar rate, like we did with the fuel tax. That was bad policy because that money was eroded by inflation. But where you have sound policy, I believe there is never, or just short of never, a justification for a permanent rate increase. Time doesn't justify that. Inflation doesn't justify that if you have a percent rate. And nor does this one, the population increase. Well, our population has doubled since the last time we raised taxes. Well, you have twice as many people now paying taxes. Why do you need to raise the rate? The tax revenue grows organically. And the only thing you do when you raise rates is you grow government. And that's not in your best interest. Government does a few things semi-good, better than anyone else, better than the public or the private sector can. And that's why we have government. But beyond those few basic essential services that only government can provide, we do not need to grow government to compete with the private sector and to provide services and benefits that aren't essential. When we raise taxes, when we raise tax rates on top of a population increase, so we're broadening the base, we are promoting governmental waste and inefficiency. And it manifests itself in the types of problems that Casey talked about with UTA, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are many other areas where we are promoting government waste. Let me just give you, as I conclude, I just happened to come across this today, and I thought it was somewhat fortuitous since it was just in today's news, and I was speaking here tonight on this topic. This is out of a national publication, Pew Trust News, and it talks about Utah and its success in selling a major transportation tax increase to a conservative citizenry. This is the model for other states now. And our governor is quoted in here. So it says, in a conservative Republican state, how does a governor raise taxes, issue bonds, and ask local taxpayers to pay even more for transportation? According to Utah Governor Gary Herbert, you do it by building a coalition of business, industry, churches, and educational groups, united on one goal, moving people around the state. What was conspicuously absent from that coalition that he built? The citizens. Government serves government. You are the only ones that can change that. And I go back to that old saying, in a representative government, people generally get the government they deserve. How do we tell government, no, we're not going down this road of inefficiency and waste any longer? We vote down Proposition 1. And we demand that our local representatives get involved in this process. and say, if we're going to raise taxes on Pleasant Grove citizens, we're going to do it in the most efficient and effective way possible, and that's make sure that every dollar that we raise stays here in Pleasant Grove to serve the needs of Pleasant Grove, not siphon 60% of it off to other areas where we don't have a need, but we continue to feed an inefficient beast. You're seeing this all over the news. There's television commercials, there's radio spots, there's print, there's internet. I pulled this off the internet, but I've seen it on the radio or the television as well. But there's this group, again, made up of the coalition that the governor has identified, business, industry, churches, educational groups, promoting this. How does Prop 1 help your family? Well, I'm telling you, a one-size-all solution is not what Pleasant Grove needs. Maybe other cities that don't have the transportation, the road needs that we have here in Pleasant Grove, they can use some of this money. You know, maybe we need trails somewhere else. Maybe they can use this money in another city. Is that our greatest need in Pleasant Grove? Do we need more bus riders? Do we, some of this stuff is just propaganda, but, we need this. We need this one right here. We don't need pedestrian trails. Hey, we've got a great new pedestrian and bike trail up here where our canal used to be. But the problem is when that money is used for it can be used for all of these things, and we already have been shown by local leaders that these are the types of things they want to do, is this need really going to be addressed? Not with this formula. And so, again, how do we get the government we want? We say no, just like we did with the public safety bond. That was not well thought out. There's a need there, but we didn't approach it right, and the good citizens of this city said, go back to the drawing board, roll up your sleeves, and do it right, and come back to us. I have faith that we'll get this done in the near future in Pleasant Grove. But because we dug our heels in, we're going to get it done right, and we're going to get it done efficiently and for the lowest cost possible. That represents your interests. And we need to do the same thing with this. So if you'll vote no, I'll carry this issue in the legislature again. We'll try to get a bill that allows the city to do what's best for the city, not what's best for the coalition of cities, the coalition of county governments, and Mountain Land Association of Governments. So think that over and go vote.